Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and we're here to preserve and promote culture in this benighted age, one weekly conversation at a time. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show through iTunes or by plugging our RSS feed into your favorite podcatcher. You can find the RSS feed on our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at VMSPod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on Spotify, YouTube, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And visit patreon.com/VMSPod or paypal.me/VMSPod to make a one-time or recurring donation and help me continue to produce smart conversation about books, art, comics, and culture every week at the Virtual Memories Show. I meant to get this episode up earlier this morning, but I got distracted when a big black bear started rooting through my neighbor's trash and then dragged a bunch of it into our yard for his breakfast buffet. It was about 6:30 in the morning. I was writing my notes for this episode, and I heard this big crash outside, and I knew what I was going to see when I looked out the window because trash day had been bumped one day because of Labor Day, and I knew the neighbors had left their stuff out, and I live in the woods. So anyway, after watching the bear for a while, my wife got up, I had some work to do, etc., so things were a little late this morning. The bear did hang out for about 45 minutes, noshing away till he got spooked by some neighbors out on their morning walk and scrambled around the back of my house and off into the woods. And our neighbor came by later, cleaned up all the trash. I know you don't care about these details, but man, they throw away a lot of food. I couldn't imagine a bear finding too much to eat in our trash, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is episode 2 of a 3-episode week, so don't complain when it comes up a little bit late. I know 3 episodes, 3 days sort of harkens back to the early pandemic days when I was cranking out daily episodes for more than 2 months straight, which I still can't wrap my brain around. But it is not anxiety and dread that created the schedule this time around. See, originally, there were going to be 2 episodes this week. Yesterday's with Durf Back Durf and tomorrow's with Daniel Mendelsohn, since they both have new books out this week. But late last week, I emailed the cartoonist Keith Knight, and I said, I'm so glad your new TV show is coming out next week. I saw the trailer. It looks fantastic. I can't wait to see it. I would have asked you to do a short episode about it, or maybe 10 or 15 minutes so we could append that to a current episode, but I figure you're crazy busy with, well, more legitimate media than my podcast. To my surprise, Keith wrote back, let's do it. At which point I noted that, given we haven't recorded since 2015 and a lot has changed since then in America, and for black people in America particularly, I thought, maybe we ought to record a full-length episode instead. And he said he had an hour free on Sunday, so here we are. Now, about that TV show, it is called Woke, and it just debuted on Hulu today. That's September 9th, 2020 for you time travelers out there. Woke is a semi-autobiographical comedy series about Keith, or Keef, and his life in San Francisco. Lamorne Morris plays the Keef character, and he's a cartoonist who's on the verge of national syndication with his, we'll say, anodyne strip, Toast and Butter. And he gets tackled and handcuffed by the police at gunpoint because he, quote unquote, fits the description of a mugger, 6-foot-tall black male. And his white pal comes to his rescue, getting right up in cops' faces without any pushback at all. And Keef has his woke moment, and his world changes. Now, in this case, the result of that is that inanimate objects begin speaking to Keef, and they sort of expose the compromises and contradictions and lies he's been telling himself as a black person in America. Now, this is all in the trailer for the show. I swear to God, this is all covered in a 1-minute trailer, so I am not giving anything away. But there are a whole ton of great performers voicing the different objects in Keef's new world, which includes couple of malt liquor bottles, trash can, and Keith's marker, the latter of which is voiced by J.B. Smoove. Woke, could be gimmicky. It could have fallen into really playing up those objects, but it doesn't rely too heavily on that trope. Instead, what makes Woke so good, or what I enjoyed the living hell out of because of it, is that it creates a whole world that Keith lives in, as he deals with roommates in the local comic shop and the newspaper syndicate and San Francisco's art world and all of the little elements that go to make up life in the city. I got to watch the screeners for the 8-episode series, or season 1, last weekend, and it really is a fantastic show. There are bits from Keith's K Chronicles and some of his other comic strips in there, but like I said, it's somehow bigger than that. It evokes a lived world, not a stilted, this is what it's like for black people, universal message, but this is what it's like for a person living in this world. The characters make real decisions. They deal with the fallout, and it still manages to create a ton of laughs. This show is funny as all get out, and the production values make it just gorgeous to watch. We talk about it during the episode, but I'll say it here. We were a few minutes into it when my wife said, I need to look at something on IMDb, because she was pretty sure the cinematographer for this is the one who does Issa Rae's HBO show Insecure, which is one of the most beautifully lit shows on TV, and she was right. But yeah, it's Woke is a fantastic show. Lamorne Morris is a great choice to play the lead. Watch season 1. Woke on Hulu. If you don't have Hulu yet, get it, whether it's a trial thing or 1 month, and use the hashtag Keith Knight made me get Hulu on Twitter this week. Anyway, as caveats go, Keith had a fan or air conditioning on throughout. He lives in North Carolina, and it was late summer, so, we dealt. I sampled that out as best I could, but, there's that sort of hollow artificialness when you run that sort of filter on the audio. Otherwise, there was some home life noise, but nothing significant. Now, here's Keith's bio from the Hulu website. Keith Knight is an award-winning cartoonist whose Nightlife Chronicles and Think strips ran for more than a decade in such newspapers as the Washington Post, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the Boston Herald. Keith's funny yet hard-hitting cartoons fuel a comic strip slideshow he tours on America's racial illiteracy called Red, White, Black, and Blue. Combining cartoons, storytelling, historical facts, and humor, the slideshow scored him a Bell Foundation grant and an NAACP History Maker Award. Keith is also the illustrator of the critically acclaimed tween book, Jake the Fake Keeps It Real. He will beat you at pinball. I believe personally I would whoop his ass at the Addams Family, which is my all-time favorite pinball machine, but maybe someday we'll get the opportunity to find out. Keith's new TV show is Woke on Hulu. And now, the 2020 Virtual Memories conversation with Keith Knight. Last time we recorded was late 2015, and at the time you were really enthused about the unbeaten Golden State Warriors, the upcoming Star Wars sequel, the first one, and the presidential election. And I'm wondering which of those three things disappointed you the most?
I know. It was a different world, wasn't it? Ultimately, it was all a big disappointment. And although, for what it's worth, the Golden State Warriors losing actually was not a bad thing. Is not a bad thing. They lost that year, right? I can't remember.
Yeah, that was the year they were 73-9, and then LeBron.
Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, the story of LeBron bringing a championship to Cleveland is, to me, winning a championship in Cleveland is like winning 3 championships anywhere else. So I thought that was a great story. And historically, it sort of makes sense that Donald Trump would win after the first black president, because historically what happens is when the white population thinks that black people have got something, they respond in kind by putting something, they say, you think you got something? Well, look at this. And then they do something horrible. Yeah. So this is the horrible that we're going through right now. So
the pendulum swings way, way, way the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully after this, the pendulum will swing way back the other way. But right now we just have to really survive this. And it's waking people up to the idea of, people are just like, oh, okay, well, maybe, when Obama was in office, everyone's like, oh, racism doesn't exist anymore. I shouldn't say everyone. White people are saying that. And so we are now seeing that that's not the case. So here we go.
Which brings us to Woke. Now, how did the series come together? Tell us about it. I've watched the first 4 episodes. I'm not going to say anything about what goes on in any of them because my wife and I have been enjoying the heck out of them this morning, but I don't want to give anything away for someone who's going to come to it this week.
Oh, okay. But
tell me about Woke.
Yeah, just, I moved down to LA from San Francisco because I wanted to develop something for television. And I was lucky enough to meet a very enthusiastic producer in John Will. And he and I just sort of built this coalition of really amazing producers and production companies. And it's sort of, I now understand why people have to thank 30 people whenever they win something because, he started working for actor Eric Christian Olsen from NCIS LA, who was starting up his own production company. And so he brought my stuff to Eric, and then Eric was enthusiastic. And then Eric brought it to his friend who runs Olive Bridge production company. And then Olive Bridge had a deal with Sony, so they brought it to Sony. And then Sony was like, yeah, we really dig this. Let's see if we can get a pitch together. And so they flew me back out here, out to LA, because I had moved to North Carolina by then. And I interviewed a bunch of different writers, potential writers, and looked over a bunch of different scripts. And we ended up with Marshall Todd. I shouldn't say ended up, but Marshall Todd came through, and he was one of the original co-writers of Barbershop. And he just had a very unique script. And so he really stood out, and we got together and figured out a way in for a show that was based on my work, based on my time in San Francisco. And Sony was the one that set us up with a bunch of different places: Amazon, Netflix, HBO, Showtime, and Hulu. And Hulu was just really enthusiastic from the start, and they were aggressive and they were say, let's write a script. You guys write a script. We wrote a pilot script. They said, let's shoot a pilot. So we shot a pilot, and let's do a series. and it's and I really didn't realize how lucky it all was, except that Marshall, who was the seasoned veteran, was like, oh my God, I've never made it this far before. I've never made it this far before on television. So he was just so excited. And I was just really naive because every time there was a call, there was a big meeting, there was always Marshall going, I think they're going to pull the plug here. I think they're going to pull the plug here. And I'd always be like, I don't think so. Like, why would they have us all on there?
Why would they do that?
Yeah. Just, and I knew we were going to make it once he got on board and going, we're going to get a show. So it was really fun. Grueling, a lot of work, a lot of notes, a lot of adjustments, but it was in the big scheme of things, it was just a fun process when I think about how like people joining the team just made things better and better and better and better and better.
Yeah, how involved were you as it progressed? Were you back in North Carolina for the most part, or were you essentially commuting to LA to advance things?
Yeah, like, early on, we wrote the pilot script while I was in North Carolina, and it was it was mostly through the internet and on the phone. Um, but once it got to writing the writer's room, the writer's room was in LA. So I would go out to LA and I would fly back every 2 weeks. But I was crashing on people's couches, and I'd like to thank all my friends for that too. That was, and yeah, just I wanted to be. You always hear these stories about people who sell their stuff to Hollywood, and then Hollywood makes something out of it. But the original people, the person that sold it hates it. They really screwed it up.
Yeah.
They did this, they did that, and they didn't really have anything to do with it. So if Hollywood was going to mess up my stuff, I wanted to be there in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And to see it being messed up, like I wanted to be responsible, just as responsible for messing it up as everybody else was. Because if I had just sold it and then they screwed it up, I would always regret not participating in the writing and the producing and all that stuff. It was very important for me to be a part of it. So I did everything I could to be a part of it.
And how difficult was it learning all those skills? I mean, I figure the writing is different than comics writing, and we'll talk about that. But the administrative, the production side of things, I know nobody does it solo. Obviously this stuff is all done, in concert with other people. But, how steep a learning curve was it for you?
It's a huge learning curve. I don't think you could really teach this unless you go through it. But it's just a ton of just, it's just a ton of, and all the logistic stuff, like I didn't have a whole lot to do with. There was so much stuff going on up in Vancouver where we shot before we even got up there. And so I didn't have anything to do with that. But just the whole writer's room and sort of breaking down all the episodes and, the opening parts of it and then the middle parts. And I know there's terms for all of it and I never use any of the right terms, but, the different story beats and the arc of the season arc of the characters and just all that type of stuff. It's a big learning curve. And so it's not rocket science. Like I just kept on reminding myself, no matter how stressful it gets, we're just making television. That's it. We're just making television. So all the drama, if we're running out of time or running out of money, like ultimately it's just television. And so just going through that and then getting up to Vancouver, because we did a lot of writing up there too, and just getting the constant notes back from producers and the network and addressing those notes, and sometimes not addressing those notes and explaining why we shouldn't be we shouldn't be changing this or changing that. It's something you learn while you do it. And, it was just, I'm just happy to be able to, when you write something and you see these actors come in and they just take it and they make it so much better with their skills, and the director makes it so much better with what he does. And just the costumes and the props and the lighting and all the different stuff that happens. And the music, Stanley Clark composed music for the show. There's so many. It's like just being in an orchestra and watching something just flourish and become this very, very big, amazing thing that hopefully, hopefully people will dig it. Yeah.
Yeah, I plan on promoting the hell out of it once it's available, which will be the same day the episode goes up. But I did want to point out when you mentioned the lighting, my wife was very happy that you guys had the cinematographer from Insecure, the HBO show, because she recognized it in episode 1. She's like, she ran over to IMDb to make sure. She's like, yeah, that's the guy who or the person who knows how to light black skin in a way that, you know, a lot of shows don't.
Yeah, it's amazing, just sort of those subtle things that, like, and there were so many different things in a show that is, a majority black run show with black leads and stuff, like how, like if you don't have the right cinematographer or like, and just sort of, it's one of the reasons why we need to have people of color in positions of power, like in the higher ups, because we had to explain like stuff like, why is he going to the barbershop? Just when the barbershop is like is a community space for black men to like talk over their problems and just things like that. Just but it was nice to have Mo Marable, the director and directing producer. He was just such an invaluable part of this whole production. And when he came on, he's the one who elevated the show, I think, is the reason why we're getting some really good early reviews. I think his decision, when he came in, he said, like, the animation, he didn't want the animation to be 2D. He wanted it to be of the world. He wanted the things that were going to be animated to be real bottles and a real trash can and stuff like that. So physically in the space. And I think if they were 2D, it would have looked cheap and silly. And not that it doesn't look silly right now, but there's a gravitas to it. For some reason, we have figured out like sort of a fine line of talking about serious issues, but using humor and magical realism together. Mm-hmm. And that really, that's Mo's fault. Mo's responsible for that.
Yeah. How involved were you in the voice casting for the inanimate objects that berate or talk to the hero of the show?
Yeah, well, we would just get lists. The producers would ask us, like, so who would you like to see who's available as far as like doing voice stuff? But we would suggest stuff, and they'd always also pitch people and let us know who's available and stuff. So we definitely had a hand in picking particular people. But if they said to us, Tony Hale and Sam Richardson from Veep are available, we were like, totally, yeah, let's go for it, Nicole Byer, oh man, we love Nicole Byer. Yeah. And we've got Keith David, which like he can voice anything he wants in my show. He should have voiced my character's voice. No, just it's it's all like everything is so top notch. It's so top quality, and I joke about this all the time. I knew that my stuff would be developed for something, but I just never knew it would be this high quality. So I'm humble.
Yeah. What's it been like being in a collaborative environment like that? I mean, you had a band once upon a time, but your job has been solitary for so long. Just that act of collaborating with other people, was it a weird transition for you, or one of those I'm new here so I have to trust everyone?
Yeah, I think in some ways it was awkward in the sense that obviously they're talking about a character based on me, right? So And we had to make changes to things where I was the only character that was based on a real person. Early on we had the Kirsten character, but I think I was too close to it, to her character. So I was like, no, I don't like that. No, she would never do that, that type of thing. So it was sort of, in order to have a character that we could just do whatever without a history, we came up with like a surrogate character, and named her after Kirsten's brother, Adrian. So it was funny because I just remember saying, "Does Kirsten have a sister?" And I was like, "No, but she has a brother named Adrian." So I'm trying to. I want to, as we explore the character, if we're lucky enough to get a season 2, I want to incorporate some of her brother's characteristics and put it into this character, which would be really funny. But yeah, it's a learning curve, and again, like it's one of those things. Did you hear my cuckoo clock? That's an authentic cuckoo clock from the Black Forest.
It's perfect timing.
Yeah. But yeah, it took some getting used to where, but if people it is like being in a band where you bring an idea and hopefully the band makes it way better than you ever thought it could be. And I think that's what the best of this collaboration was people make it way more interesting and better than you ever could have done on your own. And so that was great. And then, not everything was hunky dory, and if there were things I could do over again, but like you go into this not, I understood that I'd never done this before. So there are times where you let everything play out, and then there are times where you just say, wait a second, no, this is something that I don't want here, or like this is something, there were times you could, as it went, I got more confident in doing it. And so there were decisions and different things that I felt like I pushed back on, or just made that I think were good decisions. And I just hope, we get a second shot at it, and because now I'm a lot more confident.
Cool. And are you in the production deal mode where you're pitching other ideas at all, or is everything focused on Woke for the moment?
Oh, for the moment, but my management, they gave me some great advice, which was, early on, I was like, okay, so it's gone to series. They've announced it's going to series. Is this the time where, is this the open moment where like I can go around and pitch stuff or whatever? And my manager said, no, like he said, what you want to do is be a producer in this business. And what you want to do is look at every part of the production of the show, so you have an understanding of it. And I'm so glad that they said that, because this is such an overwhelming thing. And so like I love the idea of like being there for casting. I love the idea of sort of talking about budgets and looking at sets and location shooting and all the different props, and even as nightmarish as it was with the money, just finding out what things cost and just all aspects of the production. And I think that's super important if you want to be around for a while doing this. And so now I feel like I can talk about pitching more stuff with a much better sense of what it will take and how to make things work. So I'm looking forward to when I can pitch more stuff, but right now I'm at that point where I'm good. I just want to see this through, and this is the part that I really enjoy, which is the promotion of it. I do regret, in this COVID time, not being able to sit in a crowded theater and like listen, because I would have set up screenings in San Francisco. I would have set up screenings here. I would have set up screenings in LA and Boston, where I grew up. But can't do it right now. Can't do it. So
it puts everybody on the same equal floor. But yeah, it sucks. Same thing with all the comics people not having festivals and shows to go to. But obviously, this is TV, so it's kind of the big shot. But what you were saying about production reminds me of when I recorded with Howard Chaykin a couple of years ago, and he had his experience of actually producing a show for a while, and talked about how illuminating that was, along the same lines, that it's that sense of knowing everything else that goes into it and understanding why certain scripts work and others don't because of what would be involved in terms of building the whole thing and creating a world. That's it's something that stuck with me, where I was expecting more conversation about American flag and things like that, but yeah,
it's crazy. It's amazing. Just sort of, you just wonder how anything ever gets done when you look at it. Like, so many planets have to align. It's insane. So
now, when it comes to the story, and again, I've watched half of the first season. What did you have to get across about cartooning life in terms of how that gets represented, and this is what a cartoonist is actually like, or what the day-to-day is? I know there's not a whole ton of time spent on him, drawing and coming up with strips, but was there an aspect of, you guys have to understand, being a cartoonist does not equal X, Y, and Z. It's really, about this sort of life instead.
No, I just remember telling them, like, the one thing we can't do is just have the character just sitting there drawing. There's nothing more boring than a cartoonist sitting there drawing. So to me, that aspect of it was not interesting to me. The fact that it's an autobiographical cartoonist, or it's a person who's is going to be an autobiographical cartoonist. I just think it's just important to show his experiences. And I'm sorry, but I couldn't. I just said, like, a cartoonist, honestly, their life is quite boring. They sit there by themselves and just draw. So to me, it was better to illuminate my relationship to the city of San Francisco. So just because that's how I came up with all my ideas. And that's why I drew in cafes, is because you just see things and see people, and you have conversations, you have adventures. And so to me, it should be everything except cartooning. and to the point where even in the nightlife, at some point I had a storyline going where all the characters, this one conspiracy guy was going around to all the characters saying, "Do you ever see Keith actually draw anything?" And he keeps on saying, "He's a Russian spy. He's a Russian spy." It's to me just, and I think that was one of the nice things about having the animated characters come to life, because that's where we could really sort of have the cartoony aspect. That's far more interesting than somebody drawing cartoons.
Yeah. Right. Can you talk about your woke moment and how much it parallels what Keith goes through in the show?
Sure. Like, I think we all
I
have.
don't know. As the white guy, I don't know or how to ask this.
No,
Yeah.
but here's the thing: the being woke you can be woke about everything, about all different things. Like it's not just about race. Like, and if we are lucky enough to get to season 2, we'll definitely dive into that stuff. But like, I mean, it's being woke to me is like I remember the time I was woke about a toilet. like I remember when I was younger, if the toilet was stuffed and the water started to rise, you ran out of the bathroom and got your parents or something like that. And then one day I lifted up the tank, the top of the tank, and I saw how a toilet worked. And so like that's how I became woke about a toilet. But my woke moments in life, I had an incident with the police that was similar to what's in the show. It wasn't as dramatic, but I was hanging up posters in the Richmond district after 10 years there, completely oblivious, just hanging up posters. And then this cop shows up behind me and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm hanging up posters and this is a stapler. Don't confuse it for anything else." And all these cops showed up, and I had my white roommate jump off the bus and run at the cops, screaming bloody hell, and I just saw, like, to me, like, that was the most traumatizing part, was watching him scream and yell at the cops, and the cops treated him like they worked for him. And they didn't treat me like that. So that was a big woke moment for me. But I think my biggest woke moment was when I was in college. I had an American literature teacher when I was a junior in college, and he was my very first black teacher, which is crazy. I mean, there need to be more teachers of color in school. Like, everybody should have black teachers, because it's just, let's just say it's best for everybody, but especially black kids. He assigned us in American literature. He assigned us Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison, James Baldwin, Maya Angelou. And when someone said, "Why are you giving us all black writers?" he said, "I'm giving you all American writers." And right then, that blew my mind, because we are always taught that Mark Twain is American literature. And he was working within the system to show everybody that we are not being given, we are given short shrift when it comes to American literature. And he just wanted to show people that, yeah, all this stuff that you're not getting in school is important. And black writers, black history, the black culture and experience is American culture and experience. So my work went from being about keg parties to being about what it's like to be a black male growing up in America, a hip hop fan, being, that was not what the media depicted. I was not in a gang, I did not have a record. I was smart. I was into other music, just different things like that. So, but, there were plenty of woke moments throughout my life, but the police incident at that point, I had been doing stuff about police brutality and racism, but it just made me double and triple down the work that I did about it. And and just from there, I developed my slideshow, which on police brutality, my cartoon slideshow that I toured for years, and then that begat the racial illiteracy slideshow that I currently do today. Unfortunately, it's only virtually because of the pandemic, but I've done it plenty of times, and I think I think the slideshow provides woke moments for a lot of the people that come and see it, or click on to see it. And so I think we just have it. We have that stuff all the time. It's it always happens.
Yeah, I mean, watching the pilot or the first episode, it put me in mind of, and I can't remember if you were in Boston at the time, but D. Brown, the guard for the Celtics in the early '90s, the one who pumped up his shoes for the slam dunk contest,
Yeah, yeah,
if you remember,
yeah.
who was pulled out of his car and held down at gunpoint by the cops for driving in the nice neighborhood where he had recently bought a house in his, I think, rookie year. Just in that sort of, yeah, this is what we go through. And I was a 21-year-old college kid. I had my mind blown by that. But.
Yeah, I mean, well, and Boston is its own special place, especially to be a black athlete in Boston. But I remember in college, there was the whole Charles Stewart story, which was this white man that called the police and said, like, a black man had shot his pregnant wife and him.
Oh, yeah.
And it turned out that he did it, and he just blamed it on black people. And when they found out, like, and basically the police spent like the next, I don't know how long, like just stopping every black man and hassling them. But it wasn't until he jumped off the Mystic Bridge, when everyone found out that he was the one who did it. But, Boston's famous for the busing photo of the white guy with the American flag, swinging it at this black lawyer. That's another huge story. But yeah, I mean, this stuff has been going on forever, and we just have cell phones now. And basically, what happened with George Floyd is basically it was a perfect storm of everybody being stuck inside because of the pandemic, so they had to see it. And they didn't have jobs to go to, so they could forget about it. So they had to see it over and over. And I think they were, and having a leader that does not want to make anything better, does not want to smooth anything over. Once people saw, oh, wow, this guy doesn't really care. He doesn't want to bring the country together. I think that's when people took it into their own hands. And then you saw protests in like the tiniest towns all over the place. Suddenly Black Lives Matter went from an approval rating of like 30 to like 65% or something like that. And, it's starting to wane, starting to go back now, because when you have whatchamacallit, what's it called? What's Fox News? It's propaganda.
No, propaganda.
If you have a propaganda channel that's 24/7, that's the most popular propaganda channel in the U.S. Like Nixon would still be in office right now if he had a Fox News.
Yeah. Do you see this as a? I don't want to say optimistic. Do you? How do you feel about BLM and progress against? Police brutality and racism. Do you see something really happening?
I do see something really happening. I mean, I see it. I think people are starting to. I think white people are starting to understand that, like, in a way that they didn't understand before, and so we're starting to see there are companies making some decisions. There are things, I've seen things. I've had people reach out and do things. But I'm also seeing, I think it's a reckoning for white people. Like, I think a lot of white people are realizing, like, they're sitting there going, okay, I actually see my privilege now, and I think I like it. I never thought I was racist, but I think I am. And they're okay with it. And it's a sad state of affairs. And I'm not saying that to be a big downer, but I think a lot of people are okay with, like, I don't want to lose my standing here. I kind of like the idea that police don't hassle me the way black people, they don't understand that. Like, it's not, that police are going to hassle them as much as black people. Like, we want police not to kill black people for no reason. And we want to be able to get a loan as easily as someone else does. We want to be able to live, just exist. And I think there are white people out there that can't, that have the idea that somehow, black people want revenge or something. And I just say to them, you believe me, if black people wanted revenge, we would have got it a long time ago. And yeah, and it would not be a pretty sight. But all we want is to be able to not have our votes purged. We don't want to be, we just want to be treated by a criminal justice system that is equal. We want to be paid the same. Simple things like that. And I think for some people, they just can't grasp the idea that that's all we want, because that's not all they would want. Which it's the same with these politicians who sit there and go, we shouldn't give Americans $600 per week. They won't want to work. They won't want to work. And those politicians are thinking what they would do, that they can't see beyond like what they would do, which is they would just take the money and do nothing. Whereas they're, and that's the saddest thing, is we have people in power right now that are just terrible human beings, and they can't think beyond the idea of not being terrible. And sadly, there's no one to call them out on it. I always had this fantasy that one of these military people would be like, this cannot stand, and put our president in a chokehold, and then just say like, hey, you guys, like we can't deal. We got to arrest this guy. We got to put him in jail. And it's sad to see like military people like not doing that. And with what he said about the military dead being, losers and suckers, like it's just, it amazes me that, but we have a history of white people shooting them.
You don't want to go down the military junta direction either, but
no,
I get you.
No, but I just feel like a group of people can sit there and go, okay, like this guy is destroying the republic here, Yeah. And the other thing is just. Oh, I just lost my train of thought when you said that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I knew that would derail you. I apologize.
Well, that's okay. I mean, we're talking about the cartooning in the show, right? You don't want to hear me rant anymore. Yeah. So,
do you still, quote unquote, get labeled as black cartoonist or? Oh yeah. Cartoonist?
Well, here's the thing. Like, I don't mind being known as a black cartoonist. I think when I first started, I had an issue with it because I would only be hired in February. So I would only be hired in February for Black History Month. And I would do my comic. I would, do it fast and do it really well, get paid, cash the check. And then I would say to them, I'm busy. I mean, I'm free the other 11 months of the year to do work too. Like, I wanted them to understand that I do everything. And so once people got that I do everything and that I was busy the other 11 months, then I really leaned into what I do best, which I think is highlighting this stuff. And so I understand now, like I work very hard throughout the year, but I know in February it's going to get super busy. So I'm so glad, like February, I'm so glad we made it through February, at least with the pandemic, because I got to speak at the Library of Congress. I did my first HBCU then, and I did VCU, which was my first return. They return engagement. They liked it so much the first time that they demanded me back, and so it was really a good month. And and we shot the rest of the show. We finished on season 1 on February 28th. And then a week later, everything shut down. So it was insane.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in Washington on the 28th and doing some lobbying, and they just didn't get it. Like, everybody wanted to shake hands. I'm like, no, you really shouldn't do that. Oh, Gil, you're overreacting. I'm like, no, trust me, this is going to be bad, and you don't know where anybody else has been, and yeah, it's one of those few times that I've been right about stuff, but also full of regret about being right about stuff.
I know it's crazy. Like, some of the stuff that happened earlier in the year seems like it was 5 years ago.
Oh yeah. It just kills me. Partly it's the first couple of months of panic, March into May. I don't even recognize who I was then, much less from the before time. But let me ask, is there aspects of the TV experience that feed back into your day-to-day work with comics? Not, material from the show coming into it, but were there things you've picked up on or learned in the process of creating woke that have changed the way you work on comics?
Oh, well, one thing I've changed, one thing I've come to realize is how little cartoonists get paid. It's hilarious. It is horrible. It's just like, it's kind of crazy. But I don't know. I mean, it gave me a lot of really great material, but I had to sit on it for a really long time. Now I'm going to be able to talk a little bit more about the experience and about the actors and different things, like how fun it was to do some of the things that we did. But, and just, I think I value working by myself a little bit more, but I also appreciate working with others. It was the same thing with the band. Like, it was a great yin and yang, and so I think that's really the thing that I really appreciate is working up with a team, but also working on my own and having all that control, and how I appreciate the medium of comics, because if you want to do a comic on the moon, you just draw the surface and some stars, and you always have to draw Saturn in the background. But like, it's a budget of $1.50 for the piece of paper and the pen. And if you are going to do it in a television show, it's all this logistics, and like, we don't have the budget for that. There's a guy going, we can't do that. It's just, so you learn to appreciate it. But if you do have the budget for it, it's great to see it all come together. It's really fun.
Gotcha. And you mentioned the before time. How has your pandemic been? Like, how have you dealt? I know it's got to be weird having such a big project coming to fruition just as everything shuts down for 6 months now. But how's the experience been for you and your family?
It's trying, just like for everybody else. But I just remember at the beginning of the year, we were just about to shoot the season. I knew that I was going to be doing the Library of Congress in February, and I had just gotten contacted by my old alma mater, Salem State University, to do the commencement in May. And I just remember telling my wife, like, things are going like way too good. Like, something bad's going to happen. and here we go. The world is going to hell in a handbasket. So, but here's the thing. Like, I have always worked on my own. So I work at home. Well, I generally work in cafes, but I work at home too. We were already homeschooling our kids now. Granted, there are a lot of great homeschooling classes here with groups of kids that had to be shut down. So we literally had to really homeschool, which is in our home. But it was a much easier transition. And plus, we had finished the season. I had gotten paid, so like I am financially in better shape than I've ever been in my life.
Cartooning being cartooning, as we know. Yeah.
So, like, literally, we are just super fortunate. And so, as bad as the pandemic is for us, I know it's a lot harder for a lot more people. And we got some kittens at the beginning of this week. So we have 2 cats, 2 kittens. They're just getting used to the house. And they're perfectly, like, one's a little bit bigger than the other, just like our boys. And I was just saying this morning, I was in the room with the cats, and they're fighting and on top of each other, taking swipes at each other. And then I walk into the living room, and my boys are fighting and on top of each other. It's just, it's just the same thing. And my wife was going, there's too much male energy in here. The two male cats, 2 little boys. And so, yeah, I don't know. And we have chickens too. Which I should have said, we have 4 hens in the back. So that's where the female energy is.
I was going to say, you get maternal energy out of that. So that's something.
Oh, it's just crazy. It's all crazy.
Yeah. And haircuts? Because I'm ready to double for Blake Anderson at this point on your show next year with my hair, because I just haven't touched it since January. But, are you keeping it relatively under control?
My wife has always cut my hair. So,
okay.
Yeah, like last time I was, we had the best barber on set, Junior. He always he's like the black barber that every set with black people hires to, and he's great. He's really cool. And so that was the last outside the house haircut I've had. But my wife does all it is for me is just shaving. It's not completely shaved head, but you just put it on a certain thing and just go over it. I do half of it, and then she does half of it, or even my 7-year-old does half of it. It's not a big deal. Now, my 12-year-old has a great fro going. It's huge and it's amazing, and I'm very impressed.
I'm getting on Jimi Hendrix backup band level.
Oh, excellent!
White '60s afro. So yeah, I'll send you a picture when this is all over. But.
Excellent. Yeah, no, but I do miss. Obviously, you miss conventions. You miss just being able to celebrate this when this drops. Well, should I pretend like it's that day?
Well, when it drops, quote unquote, today.
Yeah, when it drops today. I'm gonna have set up a few Zoom things with my family, with I think with the crew and the cast, and with just people in my life that were drew cartoons with me and made movies with me and were in my old band in college. Those creative people that got me to this place, because all that. They all share in it. They're all a part of it, and also just like my patrons on Patreon and the Roundtable, those folks, they supported me until I got to this point. I shouldn't say until, they're still there for me because they want me to continue to do cartoons, and I will continue to do cartoons as long as people are, there's no. I don't want to stop. It's what I do first and foremost. And if they can be developed into TV shows, why not? I got to make my money somehow.
Final question, which gets us back to the Evan Dorkin thing that I think was before we started recording. How would toast and butter do against milk and cheese?
It's so funny because we were talking about coming up we needed to do a strip that was very milk toast, right? So I was just sitting there going, it'd be funny if it was called Milk Toasted Butter. Someone suggested it. It's it should be Milk Toasted Butter. And I was thinking of what a funny joke it would have been if the syndicate was like, we think we'd like you to add a character and have it milk, toast, and butter, because then it's got the great wordplay. But that's what I immediately think of is, oh no, I don't want to step on Evan Dorkin's toes. And no, I really appreciate his work, and just just when I was first coming up, Milk and Cheese were definitely on my radar back in the day when I was just doing zines and stuff. So big fan of his work, and just a lot of the people that have been on your show. I totally dig.
I'm glad to have you back on, and I can't wait for the Emmy speech when you have to actually cite everybody in your acceptance for the first season of Woke.
Oh yeah,
we can dream. Come on.
We can dream. But actually, I was talking to someone, a member of the Hollywood Foreign Press or whatever that thing is that puts on the Golden Globes, and I said to her, she was German, and I said, do you get to vote on the Golden Globes? And she says, yeah, I do. And I said, oh, okay. And I was like, wink, wink, wink. And she loved the show. So I hope she, I would like, that's sort of obviously a big fantasy. I know my wife would love to go, and it'd be really funny. I just want to, as long as I say, I'd like to thank my wife. It's like, that's the one you got to remember. Everybody else, too bad.
Yeah, you got the couple of important ones, but yeah, I could imagine blanking on that stuff completely in the moment. But again, God willing, not only will you guys get nominated, but also we'll be able to travel and actually have an awards show.
Oh, I know. It's I can imagine like a virtual one.
Yeah,
it's all just all the.
Whereas
the stuff is terrible.
I was going to say, besides being able to go to cafes and draw, where else do you really just want to go? Where, if we didn't have, all the restrictions, would you just want to?
Is it the little things or the big things? Because
whatever is your thing. Like, what is your? God damn it! I really wish I could just do X.
Well, this is the first time we've been through a full summer in North Carolina, and it was a nightmare of gigantic, prehistoric-sized insects that bite you in different places, and it's just a nightmare. Every year, we've always managed to get out of the country and go visit my in-laws in the Black Forest, and there's nothing more delightful than watching German soccer. In the backdrop is just is the Black Forest. It's like gorgeous. You just stand on the side, and they cook this food that you just sit there with a beer and the food, and it's just bliss, man. It's bliss, and I totally miss that, with the in-laws. So that's one. That's like a big thing that I miss. The little things are UNC. Like UNC obviously is big with their basketball stuff, but they also have an amazing women's soccer team. Like basically, the UNC women's soccer team is the farm team for the national team, right? So, so just going to see their games, they have like a new stadium, like all the athletics, the UNC hockey, and then Durham Bulls baseball. I miss that, like just going, because everything. I mean, it's just like a major league game, except everything's far less expensive. And we went to a game last year where it was supposed to rain like crazy, and I think it did rain like crazy, but they still had the game anyway, and we went, and there were probably maybe about 10 people in the stadium, and so and they lost like 18-2. They were playing the Pawtucket Red Sox, and me being a Boston guy, so I go to see all the Pawtucket Red Sox games. But I remember my 12-year-old going, because there were so many home runs going out into the bleachers. He's like, I'm going to go out into the bleachers And I was like, okay, like the moment you go out there, they're going to stop hitting home runs. And
Yeah.
so he went out there, and I got to give him credit. They didn't hit a home run for like 2 innings, but then they started hitting them again out there. And he was just getting balls, like, just like, and it was so empty that I could scream from the first baseline to the bleachers, like, hey, how you doing out there? Do you want me to bring you something? And he's like, no, I'm good. Like, it was that empty. It was hilarious. So I just miss um, the the reason why we moved to this town, a college town, is because it has everything that a big city has, but just on a smaller scale. Everything's affordable. So, I was able to buy a house on cartoon money before the Hollywood money came.
Yeah.
And you can walk into a place and say, oh, I want to do a show here, or I want to, and they're like, yeah, sure. Like, and it has everything that a big city has. It's a great place to raise kids. I never considered LA a great place to raise a kid. So, you got to deal with the overt racism that's rolling around the country right now.
But again, we've talked about how the covert racism up north is,
and honestly,
just as pernicious in its way.
Yeah, and frankly, right now it's all over the place. It's like all over the place. One of the places we had looked when we were thinking about moving was Portland, Oregon, and I just always. But if you know the history of Portland, like like Oregon itself was established as a whites only state, and especially Portland, they brought people, they made black people help bring all this stuff over, but they couldn't live there. They kicked them out after. But yeah, and so it's interesting.
Again, throwing a 1990s NBA reference out there, I remember J.R. Ryder blowing up about Portland and talking about lynchings and all that, 40 miles outside the city, and people sneering at him at the time before they started researching and thought, yeah, it turns out he has a point here about how we've been in Oregon.
And I mean, I think that's the amazing thing of what's going on now is our people are waking up all across the nation and the world, and you see athletes standing up, and I'm so excited to see college athletes like making this decision, like college black athletes from Liberty University transferring because they just they're disgusted with the place, and like one of these big recruits decided to go to an HBCU, so and it's encouraging other players. Like, I heard him interviewed, and he's like, I know my standing isn't gonna come down any. I'm still gonna be recruited, but like, this is a way to boost the visibility of schools like this and stuff. And I love hearing that. I think COVID, as horrible as all this is, it's really revealed just how untenable that our capitalism over everything society is, and how important it is for everybody to do okay. Like, if you don't make sure everybody's doing okay, then like that's where you have the problems. And people need to understand that it's not about making sure you have yours and not giving a care about anybody else. So I just hope that people get that.
Listen, my whole thing, I've said this on the show, I think the jig was up when they started calling them essential workers. They try and say, essential in terms of you can't quit, you can't leave. Essential has another meaning, which is you can't get along without me.
Yeah.
And, I'm hoping that leads to real change.
Yeah. And heroes. I never want to be called a hero, because that just means that you could probably die at this,
Right.
Oh, let's praise to make sure you celebrate the heroes. And it's just like, all right, like, clearly I'm in jeopardy here. So, yeah, it's crazy, but, yeah, man, I appreciate you, helping me, hype this thing up.
Oh, I'm so happy we got the screener thing taken care of because the first half of the season floored me. So I'm the moment we finish this, I'm going back upstairs to watch the rest of them, and then I can, spiel about it on Wednesday when we put up the episode.
Cool. Yeah. Let me know which one's your favorite episode too. I kind of
I just didn't want to mention it on air because the way it evolves is sort of a spoiler. So I'm gonna let it slide, but I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay.
Cool, man.
Excellent. Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming on, and congratulations. It's really wonderful, seeing something like this come to fruition for somebody whose art I've enjoyed for so long.
Thanks, man. Well, listen, I couldn't have got to this point without everybody, being a part of it and sort of lifting my, just getting the word out about my work. I feel like everybody's a part of the success of this. So I thank you.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Congrats.
All right, man.
And that was Keith Knight. His new series is Woke, and it's on Hulu. It is a blast, so check it out. If you have to subscribe to Hulu to get it, then use the hashtag Keith Knight made me get Hulu on Twitter, Instagram, wherever. You can check out Keith's comics, slideshows, appearances, and other work at his site, kchronicles.com, which is the letter K, CHRONICLES.com. Even though he's got some TV money now, it is Hulu. So you should also support his work at patreon.com/Keith Knight, which is KEEFKNIGHT. That'll get you access to all his strips, news about Woke, his other work, slideshows, all this stuff. It's really a great Patreon to belong to because he really, he goes the extra mile to give stuff to the patrons. He is also on Twitter as Keith Knight, KEEF, and on Instagram as I am Keith Knight. There'll be links to all of this in the show and episode notes. Now, in the before time, we're going back to talking about Patreon. This is when I would ask you to give me some support via Patreon or my PayPal. That said, we are in a different world now. My job takes care of me just fine, and the only support I would like from you guys is the occasional email, postcard, letter, whatever. If you have money to spare, there are a lot of people and institutions in need right now. You can find artists, writers, non-creators on Patreon, GoFundMe, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, etc. And if you're not comfortable giving to individuals, then go find local food banks, freedom funds, bail funds, election contributions. Do what you can. There's a lot of people in need right now, and if you're in a position to help, then I hope you'll do your part. Now, as far as things for people who like the show go, I made a zine called Haiku for Business Travelers. The first issue came out in May. I'm hoping to have a new one out in November. It's free. You can drop me an email and I will get you a copy. Or you can visit haikuforbusinesstravelers.com and fill out the form there. Like I say, free. If you want to send me a couple of bucks for postage and production, you can, but this is not about a money-making thing. This is about me sharing my art, such as it is. Our music for this episode is Fella by Hal Mayforth, used with permission from the artist. You should visit my archives to check out my episode with Hal from the summer of 2018 and learn more about his art and painting. And you can listen to his music at soundcloud.com/Mayforth. And that's MAY4TH. And that's it for this week's episode of the Virtual Memories Show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another great conversation. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show and download past episodes at the iTunes Store. You can also find all our episodes and get on our email list at either of our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. You can also follow the Virtual Memories Show on Twitter and Instagram at VMSPod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube, Spotify, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please tell your pals, talk it up on social media, and go to iTunes, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and maybe a review for us. It all goes to helping us build a bigger audience. Now, you've been listening to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth. Keep reading, keep making art, and keep the conversation going.